taking a break is a skill. It's something we want to develop repetitions on. It's something we want to do often, even though short breaks, 5-minute breaks every hour. And once we learn to take effective breaks every hour, every day, every week, we will also be more effective at taking vacations, which happen every quarter or every year. Hello there, this is Yogi. I am a career and life coach, helping people develop trust in themselves, having difficult and uncomfortable conversations, and keep ourselves focused on what really matters to us. Today, we are going to talk about how to disconnect effectively from work, how to take breaks. As you can see from my background that I am in a different location, I myself am taking a little bit of a break. A lot of us are overworked. We work way too much. And rather than working way too much, we spend way too much time on activities that stop giving us energy, and we keep spending time on them even though it's not effective. There is a well-known curve of productivity where you spend more and more time on something. In the beginning, the productivity goes up as you spend more and more time, and eventually it peaks and it actually becomes less and less productive as you continue to spend more and more time. For example, if you work 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a day, you might have more and more productivity, but eventually once you hit, depending on your own threshold, 8, 10, 12, 15, 18, 20 hours, you won't be productive at some point. I've run into this myself when I used to work at Facebook. Sometimes I would work way beyond when I was productive, where I was feeling good, where my state of mind was good. I had some good managers at Facebook who forced me to take a break because they could see I need a break, but I could not see it at the time. But these lessons didn't come to me very easily. Even after I left Facebook, I started my own business, and for the first couple of years, I didn't take any break. I was just working, and in hindsight, not even being productive, not even being effective. I ended up taking a long break between my Facebook job and my business that was 1.5 years long. But what we are talking about today is how to take breaks that are more fluid, not just taking long breaks once a year, once every few years. And this idea I call fractal breaks. If you know the idea of a fractal is a structure that looks similar at a small scale and a large scale and a larger scale. And fractal vacations or fractal break is this idea that you take time off at every granularity of time. For example, we think of vacations as taking time off every year, every quarter for a few days, or taking time off every weekend. Although many of us don't actually take time off on the weekends. We end up working here, working there, but we don't actually take time off. And the fractal idea just generalizes it to a more diverse time frame. For example, taking break every hour. 5-minute break, 10-minute break, and doing things in that break that energize you. Taking a break a couple hours at the end of the day or in the middle of the day. Taking break every month, a long weekend maybe, or every quarter, taking a week off. And then it starts to become also interesting on the other end, every year taking a month off. And I know of a designer, Stefan, who takes a year off every 7 years to give his system a cleanse. Basic idea of these breaks is to rejuvenate ourselves, to re-energize ourselves for the upcoming time period, even though the time period could be an hour or a decade. Of course, what you do in these breaks depends on the length of the time period, but taking a break is a skill. It's something we want to develop repetitions on. It's something we want to do often, even though short breaks, 5-minute breaks every hour. And once we learn to take effective breaks every hour, every day, every week, we will also be more effective at taking vacations, which happen every quarter or every year. So taking breaks is just like developing a habit or developing a skill. It doesn't happen automatically. We need to do some repetitions in order to learn how to take effective breaks. So let's talk about what to do in these breaks. The basic idea behind these breaks is that we come back rejuvenated, re-energized when we take breaks. Usually when we do an activity for any amount of time, in the beginning we are excited about it, we are enthused about it, but eventually our enthusiasm, motivation wanes, and we want to energize ourselves, bring back that motivation back in when we take a break. But many times, if we are not taking these breaks consciously, we come back more tired after the vacation, after the break, than we were in the beginning. I know of a few people who take a vacation or sometimes even a long weekend, and at the end of the long weekend, they come back more tired. They are so exhausted that they need to take a couple days to decompress from the vacation and break itself. That's not an activity you want to do during a break. Again, you might be physically tired but mentally rejuvenated. That's good. But if we are physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted at the end of the break, that is not a good break. Or rather, the activity we are doing in that break is not an activity that is suitable for us. This is where we talk about keeping a list of activities you can do during breaks that energize you. And that's a list that nobody can make for you. You have to make it for yourself. For a long time, I was not in touch of my own reality of what energizes me, and I kept doing things that exhausted me. I thought it should energize me. Many people keep a bucket list of the places they want to visit, the vacation ideas. What I'm suggesting here is to keep a bucket list of activities you can do to energize yourself at every granularity. If you have a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, few weeks, few months, or a few years to spend, what would you do during that time? And once you have a preliminary list, how to validate it. For example, I have a list of activities I can do in a few minutes to energize myself throughout the day, and that list has been modified in the last 3 or 4 years to actually have activities that energize me. Let me give an example. I used to think, and I've heard from a lot of people, that meditation, mindfulness is an energizing activity. It's a good thing to do during break. And I used to do a few minutes of mindfulness during a break. And I always was more exhausted at the end of that than I was at the beginning. And I kept thinking I should be energized at the end of mindfulness, but I was not. It took me months before I realized, oh, for some people, mindfulness might be energizing. For some people, it might not. And for me, it's not. It doesn't mean I don't do mindfulness. It's just that I don't do mindfulness during break when I want to feel energized. I do my hour of mindfulness every day at different times. Now you can make this draft of that list in the beginning, but you wouldn't know if something is really energizing or not until you try and then collect some data for yourself. And for collecting that data, you need to somehow measure, maybe before doing the activity, on a scale of 0 to 10, how energized you're feeling. At the end of that, after 5 minutes, after an hour, after 3 minutes, howsoever long it takes, how energized you feel then. And what's the difference? Now, an example of an energy that really energizes me is taking a walk around the block, which takes about 5 to 7 minutes for me. And especially if I can add listening to an audiobook that I'm really enjoying, that energizes me. Now you need to figure out what are those activities for you. And then keep a list of it somewhere, so when you have a few minutes to rejuvenate yourself, you can just take something off the list instead of having to think at that time, what should I do? Because you know what? Most of us, if we are not thinking, if we are not thoughtful, if we are not mindful, we will just go to YouTube. We will go to some random news website, start reading things that agitate us. And at the end of that short break, it will just frustrate us, make us more anxious, which leads to less energy, not more energy. So be mindful of what you are doing and measure if that's helping you or not. And this brings us to a topic about it's hard to take a break if you are not working well. Let me repeat, it's hard to take a good mindful break if you are not working well. I've noticed if I'm not working during a Pomodoro 20-minute, 25-minute time frame, if I'm not working with full attention, during the break, I'm not taking a good break either because I'm a bit guilty of not working. So what we want to do is to work well with 100% attention or as much as we can do, and then take break without thinking about work. So when you're working, not thinking about other stuff. And of course, we will end up thinking, but that's when mindfully we bring our focus back to what we're working on. And then when we are actually taking break, not thinking about work and feeling guilty. There's a song, we work hard, we play hard. So we want to work hard. And by hard, I just mean working with utmost attention, utmost focus, and then taking break with utmost attention and focus. I also want to say a few words about technology in taking breaks. Technology can be super helpful in taking breaks, but if we don't use technology mindfully, it can hinder our ability to be rejuvenated during the breaks. People think of complete disconnection. If you don't use phone for a whole week, it might be rejuvenating for some people, but for most of us, we might start to feel anxious also. And that might not be the best break. Or if you just watch Netflix the whole time, in a break, that most likely is also not a good break for most people, because you will just feel exhausted, most likely guilty, and not rejuvenated. In that sense, I don't find the role of technology to be too different when we are working versus when we are taking break. Even when we are working, the point is to use technology to help us focus. And when we are taking break, is also to use technology to help us focus in whatever we want to do. And if we are taking a walk along the beach, technology is not helping us. So we want to leave the technology. But it's also possible if you want to take pictures or connect with a friend, because that's what rejuvenates us, then technology can be super helpful. The whole point here is to use technology mindfully and break our habitual use of technology. And somewhat extended vacations, like a few days or a few weeks, are a great time to reset that use of technology and not use technology in a habitual way. Now let's wrap our discussion up of taking breaks by discussing a few long-term benefits of taking fractal vacations. Feeling energized in the moment is all good, but long-term benefit, what I find, number one, our state of being becomes more peaceful. We are less triggered. We are able to be present to the situation than thinking about the past or being anxious about the future. We don't feel frustrated. We feel more peaceful. Although the outside world, some things will happen which we like, other things will happen we don't like, but we generally feel more peaceful, so we can take effective action because we are present to the situation. That's what I've seen taking effective fractal breaks has done for me. Not that I'm 100% there, but I can see the trajectory of going in that direction. And the second thing, what I found, is there is a blending of work and life, work and play, and one starts to enjoy whatever one is doing, and one starts to do things consciously, not as an unconscious habit, but we start to do things consciously. And if we are working, or we are taking a break, or we are playing, they are just conscious expression of our being. And over time, we learn to express ourselves. We learn to do things that are joyful and not do things that are not so joyful for us. And over time, work just becomes a break from the vacation, and a vacation becomes a break from the work, and they blend into each other. It reminds me of a quote a philosopher said, when we dream of being a butterfly, are we a human being dreaming of being a butterfly? Or we are a butterfly dreaming of being a human? That separation is at a more metaphysical level. That separation is not quite clear. And by taking effective breaks, what I've found is that work and life, work and play, they blend into each other, and it all becomes an expression of our being. So that wraps up our discussion of taking effective breaks. Here is a quick exercise or action item for you. So first, become conscious of what granularity of fractal break you are not taking, and then think about what are some of the activities you can do, and then think about when can you start to take that break. What are the kinds of activities you can do to rejuvenate yourself at that granularity of time period. And I would love to hear from you in the comments below if you found this helpful, and if you decided to take a break, and if you are committing to take a fractal break at a certain time granularity, what is it? I would love to hear your idea.